the response to the .com, you should stick to what you can do. So I could only do .com, right? Because I ended up in the second oldest trade in the world, which is fruits and vegetables. So I moved from the biggest software to the biggest fruit. It was purely accidental. And so, in fact, there's two parts to the story. The second part is about what I called unobstacles, these obstacles. When Startup India initiative was launched, I wrote a column about all these obstinate obstacles. And that is why I'm here. Dhanu read that and asked me to come and share. But that is the struggle I had to go through. Thanks to KSIDC, I got the seed fund, but it took me 90 days and counting to get everything ready so that KSIDC can release the money to me. But that is the second part of the story. But the first part is that the easiest way of doing business
is not to do it.
Is doing business without a business, or doing business without a license. And that is what I figured out in the first 3 years. I figured out a way to do this, circumvent all this by outsourcing everything possible. Everything which required a license, everything which required a certificate, everything which required a registration, I outsourced it. The only thing which the licensing Raj has not got hold of is registering a brand. So you can build a brand without a single license. You just need to register the brand. So what I did the first 3 years of Jackfruit 365, I started off this as a cause to create an organized market for jackfruit, which 80% of which goes waste. And food industry, I never worked in the past. Speaking about FSSA license, all that, it is a fully licensed business, right? So I was worried to get into it. And the way I looked at that is, as a career employee for 18 years working for multinational companies, I enjoyed a certain comfort that there's no baggage I need to worry about. So when I started off Jackfruit 365, because nobody else was willing to do a business on jackfruit, I said I might as well give it a shot. But the only thing which I told my wife was that, okay, I won't take a license. I won't get myself into anything which I cannot get out till I see what I called the Melroy in my customer list. The Melroy is what I call the die-hard repeat customer. Unless I see a die-hard repeat customer, I won't get myself into anything which I can't get out. So whenever people come to mentor me and advise me on that, I ask them, give me your experience about starting businesses. It's an easy thing to do. And finally, they talk about the failures which they had. And I ask them what happened to the company. I still pay a CA because I can't close down the business. So getting into business is one thing, getting out of business is a bigger thing. So those are the kind of worry which I had that, okay, if this fails, I'm doing this for a cause. If this fails, I should go back to work. I had given it a try. I should be able to let go and come back. But that was not possible when you start a company. So what I did was I outsourced everything which required a license. So I piggybacked on somebody else who already had the license, who already figured it out. That's the first part. Then anything which requires a registration. So finally, my CA and I had a discussion. I asked him, why should I register the company? So that's the first thing you do. So, but why? Finally, it came down to one point. You only need to register a company. If you have to sell something, you are the one who is doing the sell, or you're raising funds. I said that then I'll register my company when somebody shows up with funds. Till then I won't. And so that is how I managed it but the brand I own completely. So building a brand was my focus. Everything else I used somebody else's resource and strong partnership and outsourcing. I was able to do that. So everything was outsourced. And one of the investors who came to me is like, you know what I hate most about your business? Economic Times ran a cover story, and then this guy flew in from Mumbai to come and meet me, and finally he went through. He said, you know what I hate most about your model? There is no place to invest.
No vehicle.
There's outsourced everything. Then when I got, KSIDC gave me the seed fund, and that is when I had to go through understand when you talk about different ministries, right? I have to go with a panchayat subject, to a state subject, to a central subject. And those were the painful process. I had 3 people simultaneously working with 3 different departments. So to give an example, to get the company registration, you must have a commercially registered property. So a typical .com will go to an incubator and use the facility as a commercial, you have to have a commercial license. But no incubator will take a jackfruit inside. Right? So all the incubators are out of question for me. And for my business, I have to try out jackfruit. I have to do experiments with jackfruit. So I should be able to bring a perishable fruit into my compound. So finally, I took my cottage, converted that from a housing license to a commercial license. And for that, you have to go through the panchayat, and you have to go through a lot of process. The KSIB has to, the LCT board has to change your all that. So finally, they had to use my wife's passport to get the commercial registration. So the wife was given us an ID proof. And then finally, when the KSCB gave me, the central subject, which is the registration of companies, they did not trust a single document from the state. Panchayat will give you ID proof, Panchayat will give you address proof. They will not trust any of those. They will only take a utility bill. And guess what? The utility bill which I have is the LCT board license, meter reading. And the LCT bill happily doesn't have an address.
And that would be a residential connection too.
No, I had a commercial connection. But they happily do not print address. Okay, so which means you have to get a separate letter from the LCT board saying that, okay, this particular connection has the same address. Finally, I got the address. Then I look at the first line, my sister's name. Okay. How does it look like your company with your sister's name on the first line? This is the ROC document, which is cast in stone. I said, my father gave our family name, Reena Villa, which is my sister's first name. And my passport has my permanent address, which is my house name. And the panchayat has a house number and a house name. And the panchayat keeps changing the house number. So the KSCB never trusts the number. KSCB only takes the name. So KSCB takes the house name. And so Jackfruit 365 headquartered at the Reena Villa. How does it sound? Okay. So I told them this has to be. So I gave the example of, and I took the book of Dr. Abraham Verghese, how a mission hospital was, permanently called as missing hospital. Because it was a typo. Okay. I said, okay, you should change the Reena Villa from the name and give it the number. So as I walked in, luckily I had given an interview with Madhurumi News about why jackfruit is good for diabetes, and the assistant engineer was diabetic. And he wanted to know how this is good for diabetes. So that helps. Finally, I got the letter from KSCB, and then I gave it to ROC, and finally I got, but ROC happily rejected the first name which we gave, which was Jackfruit Studio. They rejected it.
Because they're not a studio.
And they gave the second one, which we thought that they would never give it, because my book was God's Own Office. So candidly, I put it as God's Own Food Solutions Private Limited. I thought, and my CA said, you will never get this. Okay. And ROC actually accepted that one. And then comes the letter from FSSAI. Because to sell jackfruit, you need to have the FSSAI license. And I go in there, the postman said, okay, you have got a registered letter. So I go there and collect the letter. And I look at that. I was expecting that to be the KSIDC letter for disbursement. But it was the FSSAI license. And I look at the license, I had my shock. The license says Jackfruit Studio, not God's Own Food.
I just multiply this a million times over and
right,
you get a
so this
sense
is how
of
it goes on and on and on. Okay, so this is because FSSAI requires a panchayat license to manufacture things inside the property. And the panchayat requires a name of the business. So Jackfruit Studio, Jackfruit is my business, I design stuff, so Jackfruit Studio, so we gave Jackfruit Studio. So my consultant, who was the food consultant, he said, let's do parallel processing. By the time the ROC comes in, we will get the FSSAI license so that, so...
They're now in different names.
2 different names, okay? So now we're getting, his trip to New Zealand had to be postponed by a month because he had to get the FSSAI license changed again. And so then finally we got, so this entire process, a CA, a liaison for the panchayat, then FSSAI, another person, 3 people simultaneously worked 90 days. That is when I got the registration completed. I fulfilled all the requirements, and that is when I got the funding. And that is, to me, put all these subjects into one room, or into an app, or into a portal. But if ROC rejected the name, it is a Control Alt Replace. I don't need to go through Panchayat and change the license, everything. It's just a name change, it's the same applicant. And that is what I meant by an obstacle. I mean, all of this should be, and this is what the retail factory has done. The loan retail factory in the banks, they have put all authorities who are responsible for sanctioning a loan into one room.
So James, we'll come to the solution bit in the second half.
Sure, okay.
Because you're going to get back to the Control Alt Replace and not Control Alt Delete.